And before we get started, of course, we always let you know the many different ways you can join us here at EAN. You can listen to our free weekly audio podcast. You can subscribe to a section on our Astro Library. You can join our multimedia course, and you can pursue homework and get certified. A little more details on the Astro Library. There's 3 different sections. We've taken over a dozen years of materials that we've created here at EAN with myself and other evolutionary astrologers, and we have organized them as subject matter. You can subscribe for 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, or do a monthly reoccurring that you can cancel at any time. And of course, here's our multimedia course. And this page doesn't show it. However, Leroy has extended our sale on the course right now on any of the segments. You can receive $50 off and free shipping. And what you do is enter the coupon code segment upon checkout. And of course, in the beginning of the year 2014, we started producing monthly webinar classes for anybody who is registered in segment 1 or segment 2. If you would like a free sample class to try it out, just email us at evolutionaryastrology.net. You can go to our website, and then every page there's a contact us link. And you just click on that and ask us for a free sample download, and we'll email that to you. And so here is our subject matter again tonight, Chiron Retrograde in Pisces. And here is its synodic cycle with the sun. You're going to see some X's on this side in the last slide. I didn't get time to fill in all my Chiron dates, but I will do that before we send out the PDF. So you can see here when Chiron goes retrograde, when it goes direct, when it makes its opposition to the sun. One of the things we're going to learn tonight is that Chiron has a very erratic cycle. It is 51 years around the zodiac, and it spends 30 of those 51 years in just 4 signs of the zodiac. And that happens to be Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, and Taurus. And so when it's in those 4 signs, it acts like Neptune and Pluto. It crosses over its stationary, retrograde, and direct points more than 1 time. As a matter of fact, it'll do it 4 times, just like Neptune and Pluto. And again, these dates are not correct. Some of them are. I will fill those in, and they will be correct on the PDF when you receive that after this webinar in the next few days. So here is the slide that I always use to show you that when we're working with the outer planets, Mars through Pluto, and their retrograde cycles, Earth is always in between that planet and the sun. And if you follow the visuals of the arrows, you can see how it appears to do its retrograde in the sky from our viewpoint before it goes direct again. A little bit of Chiron astronomy. Its revolution around the sun is approximately 50-51 years. It is far enough out there that its revolution through the zodiac is also the same amount of time. Chiron's retrograde cycle is typically 5 months annually, or 43% of the year. Its retrograde period is 156 days, and it appears to stand still when it's going retrograde and direct for almost a week. It appears to stand still 6 days.
Kim, I want to remind you to speak up a little bit. You're just a little soft, so either increase one of your volume gains, or if you can, please.
All right, so I'm going to try this on my fancy dancy little earbud set here, and I'm talking while I'm doing it. How does that sound? Am I sounding? Whoops, am I sounding better? You can let me know, and if not, then I'll go to my second one and turn that up.
Go to the second one and turn that up a little bit.
All right, excuse me just a moment, everybody. I have got to go over here and find this, and I will turn this up. All right, and so let me know how I sound now. Does this sound better and louder for everybody? Give Leroy some feedback and let me know, and I'll keep talking. Go ahead, Leroy.
It's good for some and not so good for one or two others. So we just have to go ahead and keep moving. And
well, I would also suggest, Leroy, that you are closed out of every other program on your computer as well, because sometimes that has something to do with it, and I'm going to get myself closed out of my internet, so the only thing that I have on is the slideshow and Citrix, and that may have something to do with it as well. So I can turn up my volume one more time. I'll tell you, you guys, if I can do this in the future, I'm not going to teach classes during Mercury retrograde. For those of you who don't know it, I have Sun, Mercury, Neptune, 1 to 2 degrees Scorpio. I always tend to get a little slammed with Mercury retrogrades, and Leroy has Mercury square the nodes, and we both are feeling this particular retrograde cycle. And it does do its little thing with all the technical side of stuff, so thank you very much for your patience. A little more Chiron Astronomy. It was discovered in 1977 at, and I'm not good at pronouncing words, at aphelion, which means it's furthest distance from Earth, at the Palomar Observatory. It is known as both a minor planet and a comet. They have actually seen a little bit of a dusty tail on Chiron. Now, those objects that orbit in between Saturn and Uranus are commonly called centaurs. Chiron has a highly eccentric orbit. As I said, I'm going to give you a visual on this. When it gets to perihelion, which is its closest point to the Sun, it's just inside Saturn's orbit. And when it's at aphelion, it is just outside of Uranus. So here's a visual on that. You would see Sun in the middle of the circle there. And so this is how erratic Chiron is. And this is why in that 51-year orbit, it will spend, again, 30 years in just 4 signs. It gets so far out there that it goes through those signs very slowly. The rest of the zodiac very fast. As a matter of fact, it only takes like a year and a half to go through Libra. That's its fastest transit. So here it is for you in writing as we're looking at this. I'm sure there's going to be some symbology to this in regards to why it is so strong in those 4 signs. I would say because it's the healer, where we have our wounds, where we heal our wounds. We can see some of that energy in Aquarius and Pisces. Maybe we will be looking at the fact that in Aries and Taurus, we really are learning how to be our own individual self-healer. And as we do that, we very much increase our ability to expand in consciousness and survive on planet Earth. Little interesting tidbits for you as well. Chiron has many oppositions to Saturn over the last 3 decades, 4 decades. Same thing with Uranus, only 3 times to Neptune, and then 10 to Pluto. As you look at this, so there are many of us who are on the planet today with Chiron oppositions to these 4 planets. We'll speak about that on a more astrological interpretive level later on in some other slides. I have just listed it here because I had the space to do so, and I wanted to draw your attention to that eccentric orbit creating this type of a phenomenon. And I do think that that can change over time, depending on where those outer planets are in their signs of the zodiac. A little bit on Chiron mythology. Centaurs are mythological creatures, and they have the upper body of a human and the lower body of a horse. And you can see a visual of that in the slide behind the text. Many of us are familiar with that. Chiron was an exception to the rule of the centaurs because they were known as being quite wild and abusive of substances, and they would get drunk and violent, and they have a very colorful history in mythology. Chiron again was the exception to the rule. Chiron was intelligent, civilized, kind. He was the great teacher, healer, astrologer, oracle, everything of all the ancient wisdoms. Every word you can think of has been used to describe Chiron. Oh, he also had a reputation as a teacher and tutor of young men. He was a teacher to Achilles, and many times when you see, I'll have other pictures of the first picture I had, you saw the centaur, and then you saw another person on the horse with another bow and arrow. That usually is his student Achilles. He was known also for his knowledge and skill with medicine. Chiron was immortal. He was one of the gods. He was wounded with an arrow. However, because he was immortal, he could not die. He could not heal his own wounds, and he suffered from this wound by an arrow. And Hercules arranged a bargain with Zeus to exchange Chiron's immortality for the life of Prometheus. And so then Chiron was allowed to die, and that is how he finally healed his wounds upon his death. So there's some of that symbology that we know with this archetype of Chiron. So, Chiron as an archetype, many of us are familiar with these two words, the wounded healer. And what gets symbolized from this is that need to let go in order to heal. And for some of us, this will also include death. Chiron could be one of those archetypes that might be an indicator of a physical death. It's not an absolute, nothing is. It's also that archetype of where we make our wounds conscious, we illuminate the wounds, we bring them into the light in order to heal them. Chiron rules all of the healing arts. Any word you can think of, the shaman, the massage therapist, the chiropractor, the astrologer, any type of alternative healing you can think of, it has a rulership from Chiron. And of course, one of the things that many astrologers have observed is since its discovery in 1977, alternative healing has become more and more popular and into the mainstream again. We have been making that body-mind connection even more consciously since the late 70s. Now, the etymology behind Chiron is it comes from the word chiros, which is Greek for hand. And so that's why Chiron has also rulership over the healing touch, be it Reiki, palmistry, chiropractors comes from Chiron and Tarot, and many of us will look at Chiron as an archetype, as chirotic energy, and this is known as sacred force energy. And so wherever you have natal Chiron in the chart, by sign, house, aspect, that is where you can tap into this energy. And that is where that energy will become active with any planets it makes aspects to. still having problems with the hearing? I've got it up as high as I can. The Roy's up here giving me some instructions. It's Mercury retrograde, okay? It's not me. I apologize, but if you want to get mad at somebody, get mad at Mercury. I'm hoping that the recording is going to be good. I'll try speaking as loud as I can, okay? And I'll hold this little microphone in front of me. You guys are getting to know me more than you want to today. So Barbara Henn Clow wrote the defining book on Chiron, and she called Chiron a rainbow bridge, and the reason why is because its orbit lies between Saturn and Uranus. And Saturn is the boundary of all the conscious planets: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Saturn is that individuated consciousness. And then Uranus is the individuated unconsciousness. And from there on out, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, it's unconscious, those three planetary archetypes. So Chiron can be both conscious and unconscious. It does a dual role there. She also believes that Chiron is the natural ruler of Virgo in the 6th house because of all its relationship to healing and health. One of the other simple archetypes of Chiron is it's going to show where we struggle to get in our body, to stay in our body, and then actually raise our consciousness in that area of our life, which is symbolized by that natal Chiron signature, sign, house, and you can include aspects in that as well. And of course, as I've mentioned earlier, Chiron has long history with shamanism, a long history with ancient wisdom, and anything that we would consider in that broad spectrum of ancient wisdom can bring in Chiron and have an association with it. Now, Chiron in Pisces, of course, many of us all know. Pisces is the last archetype in astrology, and it includes all 11 archetypes that came before it. And so Chiron in Pisces is finishing up its own cycle, a natural 51-year cycle of revealing wounding and revealing the ways we become conscious to heal those wounds. However, when we put Chiron in Pisces, there becomes an emphasis on this Piscean archetype we call transcendence. There's more than just a physical existence in our universe. We become interested in going beyond the physical. We become interested in the metaphysical. We become interested in everything that exists beyond this physical universe. And in these patriarchal conditioning times, there's a lot of distortion around all of that. And so Chiron in Pisces, and we'll speak a lot to this over the next couple of hours, Chiron in Pisces is about healing our own wounds with universal source. Again, patriarchal conditioning, we become so distorted and divorced from natural spiritual laws and principles that we can have unconscious anger at God Goddess. We can feel abandoned. We can feel the wounds. We can feel like we're separated. Chiron is about making all of this conscious so that we can heal it. However, any archetype can be used or abused, distorted or naturally expressed. And some of the distortions that will start to come through with Chiron in Pisces is that if we're not working to become conscious of where we feel wounded, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and working to heal those wounds, we can easily re-imprint our wounds when Chiron is in Pisces. And one of the things that happens with the Piscean archetype is when the world is too painful, we can disassociate. We can just check out. And so that is one of the distortions we can also have through Chiron and Pisces. We just disassociate from our life, from our world, from reality. You know, the part of us that leaves the body and goes off somewhere and then wonders, where was I? Or the part of us that, you know, succumbs to substance abuses, the alcohol, drugs, medications, whatever, and check out that way as well. Of course, with Pisces, remember we have these famous cycles of confusion and clarity. Chiron in Pisces, that's going to come around the whole issue of wounding. And when we fall into one of the confusion cycles of Chiron in Pisces, we fall into believing we cannot heal. Again, you see the disassociation, all of those famous Piscean words, they come through Chiron. And we just feel like we are powerless. We're full of victimization. We're full of meaningless. I am stuck in this wound, whatever it is, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and I can't heal. Well, one of the things that we have to understand when we go through these confusion cycles, and that Piscean dissolvement, is that we have to release the attachment we have to our story. You've heard this in just regular pop psychology. How many of us go around and repeat our story, our problem, our upset, the lover who left us, the, you know, car accident, the whatever. Kim Marie talking about her Mercury retrograde frustrations. How many of us are so attached to our stories that, again, we are re-imprinting it. We are talking about it again and again and again. And so part of this confusion is to let it go. To let it go and give it to God, Goddess. Give it back to Source. And to let go and allow Source energy to fill up that void so that we can co-create with Source. And with Pisces, it's not easy to do that on an egoic level. We don't get to control these cycles. We don't get to control any of that stuff. We have to just make that effort to surrender, to release, reach for a better feeling thought again and again and again, until sooner or later, like magic, all of a sudden, it shifts. That's the clarity side of the cycle. And all of a sudden, the ability to magically heal is there. We feel connected to ourselves, to others, to the universe again. We have renewal. We're inspired. And we have that healing. And we then feel the compassion for ourselves and others. That's also an archetype of Chiron. The wounds, understanding everyone suffers on planet Earth in our imperfections. And to be able to have compassion for the wounds and suffering of another is part of the healing process, not only with ourselves, but with everyone else and on planet Earth. When we make a baby step forward healing, Source energy itself heals, planet Earth, the universe heals. Of course, we cannot look at any planet in the archetype of Pisces without looking at the whole subject of sadomasochism. This comes directly from our human-made religions because we have been conditioned to believe in a perfect God, imperfect humans. It's easy to see that imperfection within us, and that causes us to feel guilty, conditioned guilt over imperfection. What's missing is the famous question, why would something perfect create this mess? Source itself is not perfect. It's an evolving force. So you can see when guilt's linked to atonement, we have victimization in its extreme, masochism. Guilt linked to anger is the victor, and in its extreme, sadism. So Chiron in Pisces is about making all of the sadomasochistic distortion conscious. You've got to be aware of it in order to heal it. And there is a lot of wounding on the planet from this distortion from natural law, from all of the patriarchal conditionings. And so not only through Chiron in Pisces, but Neptune in Pisces, there is magnificent opportunities to really heal and break free from all of these sadomasochistic patterns that we've all been carrying for the last 2,000 years of the Piscean age and beyond that. Now, Barbara Hanclough, that's BHC, she says Chiron in Pisces, there's a crisis over connecting with Universal Source. Again, we can feel disconnected, abandoned, and there's a conscious effort to reunite with Source energy that's necessary. She also says that Chiron in Pisces is about making that astral plane conscious. That plane that exists just beyond the physical. The first one we run into is the astral plane. That's where the wounded souls, the ghosts, the earthbound spirits hang out. But we also have an astral body. That's that subtle energy body that exists, depending on who your source is, that exists a couple inches all the way around us physically. You know how it is when a stranger gets too close to you. They're not touching you, but they're in your personal space. That's your astral plane. And Chiron in Pisces makes us conscious of that. In other words, we're more sensitized to everything around us. We're more sensitized to wounding and suffering of others. Leroy really wants to watch the movie that won Best Picture this year in the U.S., the 12 Years a Slave. And he keeps asking me if I will watch it. And I says, only if I can mute and fast forward through all of the yucky parts, as I call it. I don't do blood and guts. I don't do pain, suffering, and beatings in movies. Sorry, just don't go there. I'm too sensitive to that. With Neptune, ruler of Pisces, and a degree from my Sun. So we're going to watch the movie separately someday. Giving you permission to watch it, Leroy. Go for it when I'm in Oregon next month. By the way, any comments or questions, you're more than welcome to interrupt me. Anything we've spoken about up to this point with Chiron in Pisces is also what we're going to be dealing with the retrograde. And so, Leroy, feel free to interrupt me whenever anybody has any questions or anything.
Will do. It's pretty quiet on the board.
All right. Here's a generic slide that I always put up with any planetary retrograde. It is a, by the way, I am sitting here holding this little earbud mic right in front of my mouth the whole time. So if the sound is better, let Leroy know. Let me know. So planetary retrogrades are a geocentric phenomena, and that means this only happens from our perspective on Earth. We know we live in a heliocentric universe and every planet goes around the sun. From here on Earth, they appear to slow down, stop, go backwards before they go forward again. Geocentric phenomena of apparent motion. Again, a planet is more powerful when it's retrograde because it's closer to planet Earth. It causes a withdrawal from the status quo of that archetype in order to redefine it according to our own individual natural laws. So when a planet is retrograde, hold on a second, Roy's going to do some pinning for me that's supposedly going to get my mic closer. So I'm not holding it all the time.
Wrong tool.
Oh, you guys, if you could see us right now. I'm not going to do the visual. Okay, excuse me just a second, everybody. I think you got the right tool, Roy. It just needs to go a different way. So, okay, now I've got both of them in there. Okay, so thank you, everybody, for your patience. He's trying to come up with something to... Okay, why can't I get this off? First of all, I got to get it off. I think I know what to do. If I do this, if I do it like this, you think so? Okay. All right, so everybody, I'm trying something else that doesn't have me holding it. So now I want you to give Leroy feedback again. And did my voice go down, or is it still staying up there loud enough for everybody? Anyway, when a planet is retrograde, it means that that archetype is non-static. It is in a continual state of evolving, and retrogrades actually accelerate the evolution of a planetary archetype. Now, the sign and house in the zodiac where we find a retrograde is where it's manifesting, but that opposite sign and house is what provides the clarity and the expression, the healing, the resolution of that planetary retrograde. Answers to planetary retrogrades always come from within themselves. And Roy, I have to tell you something. You left my door open, so Mr. LV is not going to leave me alone. I need your help because I'm too connected to my laptop with wires.
I'll be right up.
Okay. We're in separate parts of the house, so Leroy's getting his exercise. And I put this slide in for you again because the reason that retrograde is more powerful is, as you can see, Chiron is represented in orange here. Here's planet Earth. The planet is closer to Earth when it is retrograde. Now, a little more retrograde phenomena. Those who are born with the planet retrograde natally, this is an individual lesson that you are trying to learn throughout this entire lifetime. And that retrograde planet will be in a state of accelerated evolution throughout the lifetime. When a planet is retrograde by transit, that means it is temporary for all of us on an individual and a collective level. And when you have a natal planet that's retrograde, and that planet goes retrograde by transit, you will have a temporary time period where that archetype feels in harmony and balance with itself. And for those of us who are born with planets either getting ready to turn stationary retrograde or stationary direct, it's more intensified with that archetype. Chiron retrograde. Couple points here on that polarity. When it's retrograde in Pisces, it's pointing to Virgo. And so then here's all the Virgo things that are going on. We have reality shocks. And this is where we have to be very careful about re-imprinting our woundedness. If we have carried around that imprint that I'm a victim in the world, and we experience some type of victimization again, it can be a shock to the system, and we can sink back in to, this is my life, I'm stuck here, this is how it's going to go. Well, the re-experiencing of the victimization is the reality shock or the crises that's trying to get you to make the change. In other words, that Virgo process needs to be applied. I don't care how many times the lover leaves me. I am going to make an effort to love myself better, and I'm going to try again until I get my relationship stuff figured out. It's not how many times the upset happens. With Virgo and the Virgonian process, it's really about picking ourselves up and making the effort to evolve, change, heal one more time. Making the effort to go on that healthier eating plan again and again and again until you achieve it long term. Now, what we can run into with distortions to the Virgo polarity just as well is doing all of our avoidance activities and making excuses about why we cannot do the things that we mentally know we need to do. So Chiron in Pisces and that Virgo polarity can keep us stuck in that revolving crises door. Chiron, with all of its relationship to the ancient wisdoms and shamanism, and being a center, also has relationship with substances and all kinds of addictions. That's one of the Chiron wounds. And we have to be careful with this transit of just getting stuck in that pattern. This transit many times is the effort to break out of that pattern. That's what we need to do with this Virgo polarity point, is make this effort with diet, exercise, and rest. Make that daily effort of self-improvement. And one of the things that we really learn through that Pisces-Virgo axis is the lesson is in the effort we make, not the results. The lesson is in the trying. And that's what Virgo wants to point out when Chiron is retrograde in Pisces. So we need to be gentle with ourselves. We need self-forgiveness. We need to do it with others. We need to replace that criticism with self-love, compassion. We need that Virgonian discernment versus the judgments. And we need to have that compassion and service to another. Again, in Barber hand closed perspective, this is the natural ruler of Virgo, Chiron. And so Chiron, when it is doing its healing process, it's learning to have compassion for self and others. It's learning to be of service and help to ourselves and to others. And this is what's pointed out during the Chiron retrograde in Pisces. Are we checking out or are we checking in? Going through the planets with Chiron. Of course, the highlight of any planetary retrograde, as you've heard me say, is that planetary opposition, or in the case of Mercury-Venus, conjunction to the Sun. And in the Sun's case, Chiron, just for sake of the tape, I haven't said this yet, Chiron goes retrograde on June 20th at 1746 Pisces. And it goes direct November 23rd at 1306 Pisces. However, the highlight of the retrograde cycle is when the Sun's in Virgo, opposing Chiron, and that's going to happen September 7th, 1524 Virgo Sun, 1524 retrograde Chiron. And that Sun in Virgo then is going to shine the light of day on our ability to self-heal. This is the aha moments. This is when we get the flashes and the intuitive hits on what we need to do to heal. And of course, again, it's all 4 levels. Chiron wounding takes place physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. And the healing takes place on those 4 levels as well. Now, as I was thinking of some key thoughts and concepts for this Sun-Chiron opposition, remember, in mythology, Chiron could not heal his own wounds. He had to surrender to death. And there's a symbolic surrendering to our wounds in order to let them go, releasing them. This is going to be emphasized with Chiron in Pisces, and so making peace with that. And what popped into my head was the Ho'oponopono, the Hawaiian forgiveness prayer. And I have conceptualized it into 4 basic points. Number 1, I love you, or I care about you deeply. So if you want to, just think about where you feel a woundedness in your life right now on any level. And so you can visualize that wound, think of that wound, feel that wound, and just go, I love you. Step 2 is, I am sorry for XYZ. And so you can look at this wound within you and go, I am so sorry that you are in my life, that you've had need to manifest in this experience in my life in some way. Step number 3 is, please forgive me. Step number 4, I forgive you. So I love you. I'm sorry for XYZ. Please forgive me. I forgive you. I love you. I am sorry that I have manifested this back pain up and down my spine. Please forgive me. I forgive you. You all have a level of consciousness with your wounding. Chiron retrograde is going to make you more conscious of wound. I think that this could be a very effective prayer to say throughout Chiron retrograde, throughout Chiron in Pisces. And you could also then use it as a ritual with the Sun opposition to Chiron. Same thing with Mercury. You could even use it with Mercury because we just did that on a verbal level, as I explained Ho'opono to you. Ho'oponopono. So here's Mercury's cycle with the Sun. Mercury makes an opposition to Chiron as well during its retrograde cycle. Mercury travels so close to the Sun, that's typically what we see happening. Mercury's retrograde to Chiron will be August 24th. Mercury 16 Virgo, Chiron 16 Pisces. Mercury is a ruler of Virgo, so this is where we will have an ability to emphasize discrimination and discernment around our wounds, discerning that we are not victims anymore. Where did we buy into the victimization? How are we going to then evolve that into our abilities to self-heal? This Mercury-Chiron is going to give us an ability to recognize new mental abilities in self-healing, how to use the power of our mind. What's that concept we hear? We only use about 10% of our brain. As Chiron helps us make things conscious, we can expand that ability to use our mental capacities in healing. I think I said this in Neptune retrograde in Pisces. This is a concept that I just discovered early on in my metaphysical studies, and I've just said it for decades. We start with a spiritual wound or imbalance or disconnect from source energy in some way. Look at all that we have with the distortions of the patriarchy and distortions from natural spiritual principles. That condenses down into mental thought patterns, which further condense down into emotional distortions and wounds that, if that's not shifted, then condense down onto the physical as what we would know dis-ease. In the same process, the miraculous healings come when on some spiritual, energetic, quantum physics level, we make a reconnect with source energy that then has us shifting those mental thoughts, those mental patterns, that then has us shift emotionally, that then brings about a healing on some level in the physical body, because we no longer have that energetic pattern to support the physical imbalance anymore. That's how all wounds, distortions, traumas, diseases are caused, and that's how they're healed. And oh, by the way, a little sidebar of the other work that I do, the energetic balancing, that's exactly what that type of technology is. I work for a modern day Einstein with our other job, both Leroy and I do. And he has, it's the field of radionics. It was in the 1930s that a medical doctor in the U.S. first created a radionics machine called Rife machines. Royal Rife, R-I-F-E, if you want to search this up on the internet. And he was so successful in the 1950s of healing cancer that in the U.S. that the FDA and the AMA came in, closed him down, charged him with crimes. He died a wounded man. And everybody's been recreating these radionics. Supposedly the technology was destroyed by the U.S. government. Everybody's been recreating those energy machines ever since. And the gentleman that Leroy and I worked for was successful in doing that in the 1970s. In the 1990s, there's that 70s again. In the 1990s, he actually was successful in being able to impart 500,000 healing frequencies 24 hours a day, 7 days a week via a photograph anywhere in the world you are. This is a program Leroy and I have been on over a dozen years now, and it so fits in with not only Chiron in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, and that Neptune-Chiron conjunction we had in late Aquarius that brought up quantum physics. This is all Chiron's work, and I got myself curious. I got to go look at his chart now and see where his Chiron is. The Venus-Chiron cycle. If you want any information on that, you are welcome to give us a phone call or send us an email. Be happy to share it with you. Venus-Chiron. Venus actually makes 4 aspects to Chiron during its retrograde cycle. I have these highlighted for you. Waxing square, waxing trine. It, of course, makes an opposition too, because its path is so close to the sun. And then it makes a waning trine. And Venus's opposition to Chiron is September 17th. Venus at 15 Virgo, Chiron at 15 Pisces. And because Chiron and Neptune are traveling so closely together, that August-September time period is when Sun, Mercury, and Venus all have both oppositions to Neptune and Chiron. And so that late summer is going to be a natural time period for healing, for making breakthroughs in our abilities to heal ourselves. My keywords that I kind of noted down was with Venus-Chiron, we're learning to love ourselves on new levels. And as we feel more encompassed with self-love, then it will allow us to find compassion for others. Venus-Chiron is just a, you know, for me, even saying the words Venus and Chiron, it just brings up, how do I heal my wounds around love? How do I love better? How do I love myself better? How do I love others better? How do I unconditionally love Pisces? And by the way, Virgo polarity to unconditional love is neither selfish nor selfless. Unconditional love holds healthy boundaries in natural law. Mars and Chiron. Mars makes 3 aspects with Chiron. As you can see here, Mars has about a 2-year cycle with every other planet. Here it is with Chiron from conjunction to conjunction. And during that retrograde, Mars will make a waning trine to Chiron, a last quarter square to Chiron, and a last quarter sextile to Chiron. So as we look at planetary pair of Mars and Chiron, this is evolving our desire to self-heal. Some of us choose to become healers when Mars-Chiron is active in our chart. And of course, a healthy expression of Mars and Chiron is compassionate healing acts. Doing things that are helpful in healing for others. And these dates that you see on your screen in red would be excellent time periods to do that. Acting to self-heal yourself, and acting to heal others, or to be supportive of others' healing. So allow Mars to spark that energy within you. And of course, as you see the signs, it's going to be making aspects to Chiron in Pisces retrograde when it's in Scorpio, Sag, Capricorn, the expansion of relationships. And so it will lend itself to being helpful in healing others or helping others heal. Sparking new ideas, Mars, on how to heal. Jupiter doesn't make any aspects directly to Chiron in this retrograde cycle. However, perhaps you're remembering that Jupiter, Saturn, and Chiron have been in a grand trine in the water signs. They were there in, I'm going to lose my right brain right now, so they're doing it right now in May, June 2014, and they did it last year. Last year it was Jupiter, Chiron, and Neptune in July 2013. That's it. Yeah. But here's Jupiter's 3 waxing trines to Chiron that it's recently done over the last 8-9 months. You see the oppositions coming up. Key word for this planetary pair, the evolution of our intuitive healing abilities. And when Jupiter makes that opposition to Chiron next year, or 2016, really, we're either going to have crises around our abilities to heal, or we're going to make some new breakthroughs around that. Saturn and Chiron. You can see the conjunctions. Here we start to get into that very erratic orbit of Chiron. I've not really satisfied myself with research. I've got to take the time to do more research to get what that cycle is with Chiron and the outer planets. I suspect that their cycles are vary widely in the number of years. For instance, we know that Saturn-Neptune is a 36-year cycle, pretty steady Eddie. But Chiron cycle with the outer four planets, it varies widely. So the last conjunction Saturn had to Chiron was in 1966. They were opposite that Uranus-Pluto conjunctions in Virgo. Remember that? Remember the explosion of breaking free of recognizing the environment and health and healing, and it got popularized with the free love and sex, drugs, rock and roll stuff of the 1960s, but there was a breakthrough in mass consciousness of recognizing that Earth, planet Earth, or Gaia, is a living being. It's a living consciousness. And we are wounding Earth quite dramatically, and we've got to start putting some attention to healing that. So Saturn was part of that awareness. And what we have going on, you can see here, is Saturn has made 5 waning trines, last quarter trines, to Chiron throughout 2012, 13, and 14, and it makes the 5th and final one, August 5th here, Saturn at 17 Scorpio and Chiron at 17 Pisces. And so we have to be careful here of abuses of power and control and manipulation. This is some of this distortion going on here. What we really want to be working for is empowering others. We want to be looking for deep emotional commitments that help ourselves and another heal. And of course, whatever Chiron touches, because it exists between Saturn and Uranus, and Chiron can go both ways, Chiron brings things to consciousness. So Chiron is going to help Saturn expand beyond its limitations in consciousness. And one of the ways it's going to help Saturn expand is in its ability to heal itself. And for us to heal ourselves. Saturn, Earth sign, Earth archetype, can get so stuck in thinking that this form is everything, and it's consciousness that creates matter. And so Chiron can help Saturn understand that, just like Neptune in Pisces is doing. So they're a key planetary pair in really helping us let go of old physical wounding and traumas. And that was one of the potentials, as we see that Saturn opposed Chiron 27 times between 86 and 2006. So now at this waning, trine part of their cycle, how are you healing your wounds in intimate relationships, Saturn and Scorpio? Are you a relationship victim? Or are you really taking your ability to intimately connect with another to deeper and deeper levels with Saturn in Scorpio? If you're in relationship, how well do you support your partner's healing process? Is that mutually supported back? And as we approach this last Saturn waning trine to Chiron, if it's not mutual, there's an opportunity to bring it up, to make that effort, ease of effort, ease of reward with trines. So make that effort to change things with the partner during that last waning trine. Chiron and Uranus. Here, we have no aspects between them, but I wanted to look up their conjunctions. The last conjunction that Uranus made to Chiron, or Chiron to Uranus, was back in 1898. We won't see the next conjunctions till 2042, 43. But that last conjunction in 1898 happened at about 4 degrees Sagittarius. And so there's a Sagittarian flavor to Chiron and Uranus as a planetary pair here. And this could be awakening us, making the unconscious conscious here, all right, to return to natural spiritual laws and principles which are represented by Sagittarius. That late 1800s was also when, the 1890s, when Neptune and Pluto had their 500-year conjunction in early Gemini. 1890, 1891, I think it happened 3 times, or about 3-4 degrees Gemini. And then look at here, in the same decade, Uranus and Chiron were conjunct, opposing Neptune and Pluto. In those late 1800s, there was a little mini renaissance with the like the Theosophy Society, different kinds of spiritual movements that were breaking free from a lot of religious conformities. And I think that Chiron and Uranus are just continuing to expand that for us, including the fact that how many of us on this call were born with a Chiron-Uranus opposition in one of its 4 signs that it traveled through so slowly. I think some of the opportunities for all of us with these oppositions in our natal chart, is awakening the healer within us, making our past life traumas conscious so that we can heal them. For those of us who've been involved in reincarnation, look at how the past life regression movement has been evolving and expanding and evolving and expanding. Chiron Uranus. Now, I think that this opposition, it's not just that we have the opportunity to heal ourselves because those are opposing forces, and we're still alive and well with the patriarchal distortion. I think one of the things that we're also seeing is that we can hurt or heal one another. And that ability to hurt each other still seems to be alive and well. So for those of you on the call, I'm very grateful to you for wanting to be a healer. I'm grateful for all the many talents that we all have, not just our astrology, but all the many alternative healing ways we can help ourselves and others. Those of us with these Chiron-Uranus oppositions, we are so needed on planet Earth right now. May you be most successful in all your healing efforts. So as I said, very erratic cycle. And this planetary pair has a direct effect on our ability to heal the unconscious traumas and wounds. Again, making them conscious to heal. You can't heal something if you're not aware of it. And just because we're not aware of it doesn't mean it doesn't have an effect. We all run around, Jeffrey Wolf Green said at one point that he thought 80 to 85% of the souls were born with past life PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Chiron Neptune, we don't have any active aspects because it was back in 2010 that we had their last conjunction. It was 2009 2010, that we had Jupiter, Chiron, Neptune hanging out in the late degrees Aquarius, quantum physics became the buzzword. And as you can see, I write these down and say these a lot. Energy flows where attention goes, both positive and negative. But Chiron, Neptune are a very key planetary pair right now because they're now traveling together in Pisces. They're still within about 10 degrees of orb with each other, I think. Yeah, Chiron's going retrograde at 18, Neptune's going retrograde at 8. So they're 10 degrees in tandem here. So they're just coming off of the orb of conjunction from 2010. So a key thing for Chiron and Neptune is healing sadomasochism, especially at the end of this Piscean age. And all of that shamanistic and mystic and alternative healing stuff that we know with Pisces, Chiron works to make it conscious with Neptune. And Chiron in Pisces especially works to make it conscious. And as it turns retrograde, that Virgo polarity, then we have the ability to ground all of that metaphysical stuff into a physical reality, into a physical world. One of the other things that Barbara Hand Close says is that when Chiron is in Pisces, we can become conscious again of that astral world. And she says that when Chiron was discovered in the late 70s, that's when human consciousness, collective consciousness, which Neptune rules, we all on a collective mass level became conscious and being able to recognize that astral plane. And instead of fearing it, to work with it and ground it. Chiron Pluto. Pluto's a little more active. Last Chiron conjunction to Pluto was in 1999. That's 11.5 Sag. Pluto's been in process, or Chiron's been in process of making 5, is that 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Waxing sextiles to Pluto, 2012 through 2014. We had the last one in February of this year, but that orb is still there between them, and it will be for a few more years. The key word is the soul and its ability to self-heal. Pretty simple. Chiron, Pluto, self-heal the soul. Waxing sextile, our ability to really recognize, ground in consciousness these mystical sides of Chiron and Pisces. Look at how that alternative healing movement is continuing to become more and more mainstream. And as we know, a lot of the alternative healing modalities are aligned with natural spiritual laws and principles. So while we've tried to suppress it and distort it, we can't destroy it. And we really can be looking at that stuff again with these sextiles here just becoming more and more real. People recognizing it, turning towards it, practicing it. Now, something I also wanted to remind everybody about is Jupiter's going to be going into Leo next month's classes. But in September of 2014 and February of 2015, they will be within orb of a Yod. And so Jupiter in Leo distorted is either going to be doing this power and control over others and hurting others even more, causing more wounding, or positive expression of Jupiter in Leo is the creative principle finding new ways to heal, even better yet, empowering others, making breakthroughs with healing our wounds. And each of us will have this yod somewhere in our chart, and so each of us can be doing that ourselves on a very personal level. Take advantage of it. So I did get all my keywords down here as Chiron in Pisces is retrograde through the 12 houses. I'll see if I can do this fast enough to get us through in the next 40 minutes. Before I do, I'm going to pause for a drink. Any comments or questions from anybody? And let me know if anything comes up. Roy. So when Chiron is retrograde in Pisces in the first house, we're either going to have body breakdowns or we're going to learn how to have some body healings. And one of the dangers is with this transit is we can think we are the healing force versus allowing the healing energy to move through us. There will be self-identity wounds and complexes that Chiron is going to be working to make conscious or expose, that we will then work to heal. And that polarity point Virgo over there in the 7th house, this is a natural time period to look to the other as a helper in healing ourselves. Because that first house can be such a loner, or I can do it myself. That Virgo polarity is reaching out to help heal another and allowing another to help heal us. Again, these are just bullet points. We don't have enough time to go in depth, so I thank you all for bearing with me in regards to this. When Chiron in Pisces transits through the 2nd house and goes retrograde, all of our wounds around resources can be exposed. I don't have enough, they've been taken away. You know, past life memories of this type of stuff can come up. We can have loss around our personal meaning in life. 2nd house is values. What is meaningful to us, especially on an intimate, personal level with ourselves. And so Pisces can just dissolve away that meaning in life. And the Virgo polarity is we can have shocks and crises from others, the classic divorce, or someone confronting us and pointing out what we need to do in order to heal ourselves, in order to reestablish some meaning in our life. So there's wounds around values. And if we're insecure, we can be trying to impose our values onto someone else. Virgo polarity, others can be trying to do that to us. And we're going to have to point out to them, thank you very much, that your value is yours and mine is mine. And if our values are too incompatible, then it's going to be hard to have that deep Scorpio 8th house commitment with someone else. So again, there could be the loss of a relationship in addition, or finding someone who shares similar values as we do, and we could find that deeper soulmate connection as well. We have to be careful around not valuing ourselves. And of course, the 2nd house, all of the sexual wounding. The Virgo polarity in the 8th, healthy expression of that is the partner who understands our woundedness and is there supporting us in the sexual healing. You all know the distortions, the sadomasochism, that can be there. But we can also have the healing of sexual wounding with this transit. Chiron in Pisces transiting the 3rd house. We have wounds around discrimination. That curiosity of the 3rd house going here and there and everywhere, and Pisces no healthy boundaries, and poof, something happens. Somebody says something that hurts us. We say something that hurts somebody else. We make a choice and have an accident. Barbara Hand-Clough says that in Chiron's in the 3rd house, we learn from our mistakes. And hopefully we start to recognize before we have to make the mistakes. We start to become conscious of choices and consequences. So this Chiron transit in Pisces, there can be such an intense scatteredness. And that Virgo polarity in the 9th is teaching us to focus, teaching us to discriminate, teaching us how to be pragmatic. Of course, sometimes around the 3rd house, there can be all of the sibling issues and wounds and opportunities to heal, to perhaps have one of those, to make that effort again for that deeper conversation, and perhaps as maturing, evolving adults, to understand it from another soul's perspective. If you have all the disillusionment around communications, if you have the arguments and confrontations around communications, can you go over to that Virgo polarity, 8th house, and hear from another's perspective, from another's philosophical or cosmological understanding? And so eventually what we have with this Chiron in Pisces is we learn how to have an integration of ourselves rather than being the chicken running around with its head cut off, being so scattered, so out of focus, so, running all over the place. If we have that 3rd house implosion, because we're in the middle of that, we're just trying to do too much, take in too much, and we need to have that downtime, that quiet time, in order to heal, in order to heal the mind, in order to heal, in order to allow that right brain a chance to be a part of the picture. There has to be a balance here. With this Chiron Pisces transit, there has to be a balance between left brain, right brain, integrating into whole brain, so that all levels of consciousness are functioning. And the 3rd house is in balance with all that. I mean, that the left mind is in balance with all that. Chiron in Pisces transiting to the 4th house. Of course, this is going to bring up all the emotional wounding and all the wounding around our self-image, how we see ourselves from moment to moment, inwardly, outwardly, relating to others. The lesson here, of course, is going to be learning to love ourselves on deep levels and learning to reconnect with source energy on an emotional level, to feel the universal parent and source that then allows us to look at all the wounds we have with our parents from our childhood. And that Virgo polarity up there on the 10th, it's going to ask us to grow up. It's going to ask us to take some responsibility for choosing those parents, for choosing those emotional lessons that we're experiencing. And we're going to have a little bit of discernment on emotional levels. You know, we could give our power away, Pisces, to someone else, and then wonder why we're hurt when they leave us again. Well, that 10th house Virgo polarity is saying, have a little discernment and responsibility around who you're going to let in emotionally. Find out who they are first. And of course, we'll have intense emotional cycles because Pisces' 4th house is going to be a double signature. And so Chiron's going to go through those cycles of emotional withdrawal with the triggers and the hurts and the issues that draw us inward to try and heal, and then we'll flip over into the emotional animation and we'll want to emote. What we have to be careful of is intensifying those extremes on emotional levels. And we need to kind of, as we're learning to take responsibility for our own emotions, as we're learning to have healthy Piscean boundaries, then Chiron's going to help us find a balance there. You don't have to go off the deep end emotionally all the time anymore. We can learn how to recognize when that's starting to come and make the appropriate changes for ourselves. Excuse me, I'm feeling a little emotionally triggered right now. I really need a little bit of alone time so that I can find my balance and center again on my own level and loving myself, and then I'll come out and share again. So learning to understand our emotional ebb and flow and working to heal that and recognizing that, again, healthy balance, maturing, responsibility, Virgo polarity 10. Chiron in Pisces, when it transits through the 5th house, is going to bring up, yet again, bring up childhood wounds, where we got wounded as a kid, and it created an emotional rest, and we carried that into adulthood. Creativity wounds, childhood wounds. If we've not learned from the 4th house that emotional self-reliance, then we go to the trauma drama extremes with Chiron in Pisces. And we get controlling through victimization. We can lose sense of ourselves, or, again, trauma drama side, have very, very demanding egos. You know, that 5th house Leo bottomless pit. Chiron in Pisces can just be, you know, it can just be extremely demanding in its need for love. And here again, we must learn self-love. Creativity wounds with this transit, it's going unnoticed. The world not buying in to what we have to create or what we have to sell. And so that polarity point when Virgo is in the 11th house is recognizing universal source is the ultimate source of creativity, and how do I align my will with thy will? How do I allow the creative force of the universe to come through me? I just can't create from my own 5th house ego. I have to be a creative service to what the universe needs. So it could bring up memories of past lives where, again, our creative ventures didn't turn out somehow, some way. And the healing is becoming conscious of how a creativity has to serve a purpose beyond ourselves. 11th house polarity. And when we shift to that, then Pisces, you know, Chiron and Pisces can just, you know, bring through the miracles around creativity. When we shift our perspective, sometimes it's a shift of perspective rather than what we're creating. And when we do that, then all of a sudden, everybody wants what's been sitting on the shelf for 10 years. And it was us that changed. Chiron in Pisces transiting through the 6th house. The healers in need of healing themselves. This is classic signature of the healer. Chiron transiting the 6th. You put it in Pisces and it becomes, you know, the mystical side of the healing. The shaman, the medical intuitive, the astral plane healer. But what we can have happen here is the mind-body can go out of balance here. We can run into nervous system issues, health issues. When Chiron transits the 6th house, we can be a hypochondriac. And we've got to reach over to that 12th house polarity. And Virgo's sitting over there, and we've got to be able to have balance and objectivity around our sensitivity. We've got to be able to recognize that. Chiron transiting through Pisces. Pisces as an archetype rules the overall immune system. It rules the endocrine system. And because it is the collective conscious unconsciousness, relates to our relationship to universal source, Pisces is sensitivity, hypersensitivity. So Chiron in Pisces, we're hypersensitive in general to our wounds. But we also have that ability to be hypersensitive to what is necessary in healing the wounds. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, all 4 levels. This house transit, there can be an emphasis on, again, the physical, mental, mind, body. But the emotions are going to be the bridge in there between whether it manifests or not. So very important to do all those Virgo polarities of diet, exercise, and rest. And 12th house, giving yourself downtime. Giving yourself time to be quiet in nature, or just take a break from the busybodiness, because as you can see here with this Chiron transit, there could be a lot of workaholic issues. Give until we're burnout. And if we're working to heal that and move into what we call karma yoga, or our natural work, and one of the things we learn to do is balance that. We don't have to be the workaholic anymore. We know how to balance rest with work. And we learn how to spiritualize our work, no matter what it is. And of course, one of the things that comes in is all of the sadomasochistic issues as well. It's there generally with Chiron in Pisces. We can see all the sadomasochism's distortions. And when Chiron's retrograde in Pisces, again, it's making this sadomasochistic extremes conscious, so we can do that Virgo practical effort to step away from that stuff, to say no, to hold healthy boundaries, to move out of the abusive relationship if necessary, to move out of the abusive work environment with this transit, if that's what we need to do. You know, there's many extremes to the sadomasochism. If we're on the masochistic side, we have to step up and hold healthy boundaries, and we have to be able to believe in our own self-worth. If we're on the sadistic side, then we're going to have to balance that out with serving another, with serving the others as a whole in some way. And that Virgo polarity 12th house, if we're on that sadistic side, we may find ourselves imprisoned some way to balance it out. Others will be showing us how to serve. Chiron and Pisces transiting through the 7th house. This is where we will bring up all kinds of relationship wounding and enmeshment issues. And we need to heal that with healthy boundaries. We need to have a balance of that giving and receiving with others. So we need to have that equality with others. And so this Chiron retrograde transit and make us conscious of where there are extremes of imbalance in our life. And that Virgo polarity in the 1st house has us standing up for ourselves in some way, or acknowledging the other person in some way if we're the controlling one, if we're the one who has to be in charge. So all of the distortions that'll come up around relationships with the 7th house are in process of becoming conscious so they can be healed. We have to learn how to, that psychology of listening that comes with the 7th house. We sometimes have to be very, very quiet to hear when Pisces is on the 7th house cusp or in the 7th house cusp. We can get triggered in our own wounds, and then we lose our ability to hear what the other is saying. So very, very important to quiet ourselves down sometime in order to really hear what the other person is saying. And Virgo polarity 1st house, speaking up if others are not listening to us. And so as we go about healing relationship wounds, finding a healthy sense of individuality, Virgo 1st house polarity, finding that balance and equality, as we go about that, eventually what we want to do is to be able to see the divine expressing itself through another soul, and vice versa, others seeing the divine in us. When we have Chiron and Pisces transiting through the 8th house, there's power and resource issues, control games, manipulation wounding, all the sexual wounding again. You can have all the sadomasochistic extremes that can start to come through here. All the separating desires that trip us up on our path back to source. Or, all the words you can think of with Pluto, Scorpio in the 8th house. They're all going to be brought to the surface here. Or we could be fooling ourselves and just thinking that we are more powerful than we are. Power games all across the board. Even just in an intimate marriage type situation, you can have little power struggles going on. And the Virgo polarity in the 2nd house means we'll get thrown back in upon ourselves to learn self-reliance, to learn how to discriminate how we're giving our power away if we're doing that, to be able to see how others might subtly be manipulating us to take our power away, and we get off that roller coaster, stop playing that game. All of the 8th house extremes could be going on here, and there could be Piscean confusion around it. As you see, I've also put in here black magic versus white magic. We can have all of the subtle, hypnotic distortions of manipulation between ourselves and others. On a more positive white magic perspective, using power in a healthy way, empowering ourselves, and then recognizing one of the most beautiful things we can do on the planet is to help empower others who feel disempowered. And again, Virgo over there on that 2nd house, when we have healthy self-reliance, when we recognize our ability to take care of all of our own needs, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, when then we have an ability to discriminate who to commit to and who not to, what to commit to and what not to. Healthy returning desires versus, falling for another separating desire. So with this Chiron and Pisces signature, you can have the best of the best and the worst of the worst and everything in between. And what you really want to be doing is exposing your separating desires, to release them, surrender them, and then devote yourself, Virgo, to simplifying your life, second house, and really committing to source in a devotional nature. And then all of the 8th house distortions will release, will dissolve, will heal. Chiron and Pisces transiting through the 9th house. Here's where we're going to have religious and spiritual wounding. Again, mutable quadrant, mutable houses. All of the sadomasochistic distortions of the Piscean age can be here. We're going to have honesty and integrity issues. We can have wounds around that. There could be memories of past lives where we weren't integrity with ourselves, where we weren't honest with others, and it really hurt us or others in some way. And that wounding is being exposed in order to make amends, in order to heal it. This signature is going to be asking us to return to natural spiritual laws and principles, which in and of itself will help us dissolve the wounds. We have to be very careful about compromising on ourselves with this signature. Chiron is an immutable sign, an immutable house, and sometimes it can feel like it's too much effort to stand up for ourselves and we just go with the flow. Well, that Virgo polarity in the 3rd house is taking a stand. It's discriminating. It is making a decision. It is saying, this is who I am and this is who I'm not. It's teaching us to stand in our truth, and if we're not, there's always going to be another 3rd house, Virgo, who will point out the weakest link in our ego or in our own, religious or spiritual distortions, or thinking, we know all the truth. Because what we can have with this signature is, very charismatic healers full of BS, a preacher versus a teacher, not practicing what we preach, not walking our talk. And so Chiron's work in this retrograde is to expose it and then have us realigning ourselves on a closer path to truth. Exposing a personal limitation on truth for a more expanded understanding of universal timeless truth. And then the charismatic healer at a natural level do wonders of work for themselves and others on planet Earth. They really can help us in returning to natural spiritual laws and principles. Chiron and Pisces transiting through the 10th house, we're going to have wounds around authority and parental issues. We'll have them around our career and resources. Remember, if we don't conform to consensus, norms, rules, laws, we feel conditioned guilt. We can have wounds around all of that. And so healing is taking charge of our own life. It's accepting responsibility for ourselves. And it's recognizing that power is a very, very sacred gift that can be used in helping others in power, or that can be abused. That Virgo polarity is in the 4th house, and we must reach for inner security, inner emotional healing. We must parent our own inner child in order to mature. And then we can be responsible healers on planet Earth. We can make a living as the healer. We can make peace around our parental issues. We can recognize that we are more than our stuff. We are more than our position in society. We are more than our position of power out there in the world. You know, this transit allows us to take all that shamanic energy of Pisces and manifest it in the world somehow. When we're working with Chiron and honoring Chiron, you know, in its effort of wanting to help us heal around all of these 10th house issues. Then Chiron will bring on those, you know, miraculous opportunities of the world, 10th house, noticing our healing gifts. Chiron in Pisces, transiting the 11th house. Here again, we could quite easily see mental issues and wounds, nervous system issues and wounds. The 11th house has rulership of the brain. It's a co-ruler of the central nervous system. So we're either running around with past life trauma and PTSD and we're just, you know, nerves on edge, or Chiron's transit in Pisces, we're just trying to check out some way with substances. There's a need to really be able to detach from our wounds when Chiron Pisces makes this transit. And we've got to be able to then let go. Let it go, let it go, let it go. If you have Chiron and Pisces in the 11th house, your assignment is to go watch the new Disney movie, Frozen. I have a 4-year-old niece. I've watched it more than once. And there is this song in there about letting it go, let it go, let it go, let it go. And I have a 2-year-old daughter by my nephew, and those two girls, when they get together, they run around and they that's all they do is let it. They sing that song again and again and again and again and again. And right after a while, we're a little tired of it, but then we're like, wait a minute, there's a message going on here from these little kids and this movie. So you got this transit, go watch that movie and listen to that song. I mean, we could all listen to it with Chiron in Pisces. Now, the Virgo polarity is the 5th house. And this is where we get in touch with our own creativity and our own ability to be a visionary healer. Because when we're stuck in our past life wounds, when we're stuck in our PTSD, when we're stuck in our mental loops, there's no room for creativity. And so that detaching and letting go then allows that Virgo polarity in the 5th house to really spark our creativity, even if it's just our own healing abilities. It doesn't mean we have to go out there and be the healer, although we can be. It can just spark our own abilities with diet, exercise, and rest, our own abilities to take care of ourselves in new ways. And then that it just opens up that 5th house energy of feeling better about ourselves. And finally, Chiron in Pisces, transiting through the 12th house, is everything we've been talking about in the last 2 hours. There's wounds to the psyche. We can have out-of-body issues. We need the grounding. That's when we need Virgo polarity in the 6th house. We need to put our feet on the ground. The unhealthy boundaries. We can run around in our psychic body and totally ignore our physical body. And we're going, to create some of those Virgo reality shocks to get us back in the body, to get us grounded. This Chiron transit signature, we can have the extremes of unhealthy boundaries. Florence Nightingale, and just give way beyond what's healthy or even necessary. And when we're doing that, then the healer and the mystic ends up with the wounds of disease, the wounds of burnout. They can't do it anymore. And when we have, because Pisces is known for, Pisces 12th house is opposite Virgo 6th house. And so they'll both be, the polarity is related to health and healing. And on the 12th house side of the equation, we run into those health issues or diseases that are very hard to put your finger on. They're hard to diagnose. Again, it's going to be related to that hypersensitivity. And it's going to be related to a disconnect with source energy. And so we have to make that conscious effort, Virgo, 6th house polarity, moment by moment, day by day, routine in our life of our spiritual practice. We can't just hang out in the Piscean spaciness. We've got to ground the spiritual energy, and we've got to practice it day in, day out, and keep reaching for a reconnection to source. And then that's when the miraculous healings come along with issues. We've got to honor how sensitive this Chiron Pisces transit is in the 12th house. And we've got to balance the head in the clouds with feet on the earth. We've got to balance activity with downtime and healing time and rest time. We can't just, again, we can't just be hanging out in the ethers. We can't, you might need to watch all the susceptibilities to the substance abuses. And then that Virgo 6th house polarity, you've really got to commit to the diet, exercise, and rest routine in order to heal. You're in a body. Be in the body. All right, I have made it all the way through. One more slide on the Astro Library. Here's our future classes. Are there any questions or comments with anything I said about Chiron and its retrograde cycle? Okay, you're a quiet bunch. I have you all in a meditative state, don't I? I got myself calmed down. Another class through Mercury retrograde. Did you have something, Leroy?
Nope. Great class. Nice job. And thanks everybody for your patience with all the techno errors early on.
Oh, yes. And if I can do my best at not teaching during Mercury retrograde, I will, but we make it through it. So bless you, Mercury. You have a role in Chiron's retrograde cycle. Staying with that process. So, um, I, I guess I just in closing comments, I just wish all of you the best and the most success in making your wounds conscious, and then much success in your process of healing yourself and supporting others in their healing process however you desire. And I thank you on behalf of Leroy and I very, very much for joining us and being supportive of us as we've moved into this webinar format of teaching classes. I get to the end of the 2-hour class and I recognize how much I love to teach astrology. So thank you all very, very much for joining us and working with us. And if you're interested, again, we're going to do 2 nights back to back in July with Jupiter and Leo. We'll spend 2 hours studying the archetype, its transits, a brief overview of its retrograde cycle, and then we'll look at Jupiter in Leo by houses for its next year transit. And we have Uranus retrograde in Aries, and I take a break from teaching the month of August. So thank you, everyone. And if you want a free sample class to download on either segment 1 and or segment 2, email us at evolutionaryastrology.net, and we'll be very happy to send you that sample. And then you can still get a course segment, $50 off, free shipping. I think Leroy's running it through the summer solstice.
Yeah, June 20th, the summer solstice, and just address those requests to MediaMonk at evolutionaryastrology.net.
All right, thank you, everyone.